Today, we're going to talk about alcohol. Now, alcohol has had a very bad rap in recent years, and we've been told that there is no safe level of alcohol consumption. But is this really true? There's a new book out that has just come out called The Very Good News About Wine by Tony Edwards. And today, I'm going to talk to Dr. Zoë Harcombe PhD about this subject. Hi, Zoë.
Hi, Glynis.
Well, when I read about this book, I was very interested because I've been reading everything they've been saying about alcohol. So I asked you about it. And voila, it turns out you know Tony Edwards, who's a medical investigative journalist. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And you know him, you've helped him with research in the past, and you have a copy of the book. So why don't you show
I
us?
do indeed, yes. God, we've known Tony now, I think, for about 10 years. And I think people know that what I do is try to get to the bottom of the evidence for different topics, particularly in the field of diet and health. And Tony has actually done me the most massive favor, because if there's someone I trust who's looked at something, I just leave it to them. I'm not looking to reinvent the wheel. So when I first came across Tony and I saw that he was approaching the topic of alcohol in the same way that I would approach red meat or fruit, 5 a day, glasses of water, whatever, it was just wonderfully reassuring that I didn't have to go into that topic. Now, I still do go into it because my own followers, for example, the time I most recently looked at alcohol was just August last year. There was a really big new study that came out by Zhao and colleagues, and it was the most enormous review of all the literature on alcohol. So whenever there's a massive review, I would then go and look at that review. Was it robust? What conclusions did it come to? So I've looked at alcohol quite recently, very
Yes.
objectively, but Tony is actually doing it in parallel just all of the time. It's been his great passion for, I think,
Can
about
you
20
can you
years.
hold up the book for us?
Yes, this is the most recent one. This is the
Right.
one
So
that's
the
just
very
come
good
out.
news about wine, and he's also has a previous book
And
on
he's
wine.
done, if I put this one over here, the good news about booze. Now, I mean, you can probably see the different thickness. This is a lovely hardback. I think he had a limited edition hardback, and he gave Andy and I a copy because we run a small publishing company, and we did
Right.
help Tony in the early stages with this one. And then he's done this one. And I mean, this is a really readable, I mean, it's 130
Doesn't he
odd
even
pages.
thank you? Don't you have a thank you in that
He
book?
does. No, I didn't realize this. I'd actually just done my review on Amazon, and then I happened to look at the acknowledgements, and he thanks me, and he thanks a few other people that I know. He knows Carol Sikora pretty well, so he thanks Carol Sikora, because I think Carol also respects people who go into the evidence and don't just knee-jerk. I mean, the whole alcohol area, the whole nutrition area is just numbers plucked out of the air.
So
And
let's just break
yeah,
this down.
unpack it. Yeah.
So I know that the guidelines, the alcohol intake guidelines have been slashed in recent years. They are really getting people to drink less and less alcohol. They have now been telling us that there is no level of alcohol consumption that's safe. They are telling us that, there's always been this theory that the French, for example, who drink, I would say, more moderately than the British and drink a lot of red wine, are actually very healthy. They have less cardiovascular disease. They're now saying this is a myth and it's not true. But the thing I've always heard is that teetotalers have higher incidences of serious disease than people who drink moderately. So if that's true, how can alcohol be so bad for you? And I think what Tony is saying in the book is, they're saying that it's so dangerous drinking alcohol, but he's saying, in fact, if you drink moderately, and moderately is the key word, that there are huge health benefits. So what are we meant to believe, and why on earth would they be misleading about what the actual truth is? What's going on?
Yeah, there's a lot of good questions there. I mean, let's just cover off the units in the UK. It used to be 21 per week for men and 14 per week for women.
Right.
And you're right that they've been slashed recently, and they've basically just said it should be 14 for both, but actually that's a maximum, and they would be really happy if we didn't drink any at all. Now, just to set the record straight, those are numbers plucked out of thin air. And one of the guys who, Richard, and I can't remember his surname, but one of the people on the original committee actually put in a quote that ended up in the media, we just plucked those numbers out of thin air. They were not based on anything. And then, of course, he was rounded upon by the rest of his colleagues. You weren't supposed to let that known, you know, we're supposed to look
They made those
scientific or
numbers
whatever.
up of the
Yeah, they're
guidelines
completely
of how
made
much you
up.
should drink?
Yeah, it's like 5 a day. It's like 8 glasses of water a day. It's all completely made up. It's all, there's no
And you know what? We've
evidence.
all grown up knowing this and sticking to it and
Yeah,
believing it and trusting it.
yeah.
That's it.
Okay, so let's look. I don't know if you can see this. So this is on page 109 of the Good News About Booze. I don't know if you can, can you see that's sort of like a hockey stick? It's a bit of a
I can see that
J.
squiggle, yes.
Okay, so you can see that it's a bit of a J. And what that's showing is you've got this sort of reference line here of 1. So what they've said is, let's assume that those who don't drink any, you always anchor, when you're doing population studies, you always anchor to the point 1, because what you want to say is, right, let's say, I don't know, people who don't do any exercise, they're at point 1, and then you look at the mortality rate of people who do quite a bit of exercise, and their mortality rate might be about 0.8, let's say. So you always anchor it to 1. So what that J is actually showing is the non-drinkers actually have a higher risk than those who drink moderately. Now, because it's a J, it then breaks through that line 1. So it means the higher drinkers, the really quite heavy drinkers,
Yes.
are going to be the people with the highest mortality rates during the study that's being looked at.
Right.
But the really interesting thing is that first part of the J, or the hockey stick, because
Yes.
what it's saying is that, and I will come on to exactly what moderate means with the
Yes.
research that I did in August. What it's saying is that the non-drinkers actually have a higher risk than the moderate drinkers. You need to explore that non-drinker group, because in that non-drinker group, you've got unhealthy people who might have been former drinkers. So an alcoholic who's had to give up because their liver is shot or whatever would now be in the non-drinker group.
Right.
In the non-drinker group, you've also got me, somebody who just
Yeah, so
doesn't
you're a
like...
non-drinker.
Only because I don't like the taste of alcohol. I wish I did like the taste of alcohol, because I quite
Well, I
like
mean,
to
I
be...
didn't when I started, but you know, I trained myself.
my mum never told me that you had to persevere. You know, you get given your first drink at the dinner table when you're 16 or something. Mum should have said, you're not going to like it, but stick with it. So my brother stuck with it and I didn't. So he drinks and I don't.
Right.
But you've also got people who don't drink. You've got, for example, vegetarians who are really strict and won't drink a lot of wine because it's made over fish scales. Or won't drink quite a lot of alcohol. Yeah, quite a lot of alcohol is non-vegetarian. So in that
Oh, I did
non-drinker
not know
group,
that.
you've got some really healthy people and you've got some really unhealthy people.
Well, you're also in
So
a non-drinker category. You could have people who are drinking fizzy drinks and Coke all day long.
absolutely, absolutely. So what they found is that relative to that non-drinker group, you've got this sort of sweet spot of people who are drinking some alcohol are actually in a population study. And remember, that's just looking at associations. In a
Right.
population study, they're having fewer deaths during the period of observation than certainly the heavy drinkers and also the non-drinkers.
So can we relate that to alcohol at all?
Yes, so the study that I most recently looked at in August last year was a really fabulous study. And there's something in that the highest level of evidence that we can get when we're looking at evidence for a topic is something called a meta-analysis and a systematic review. So you systematically review all the evidence, you don't leave anything out, you don't cherry pick, and then you pool it together in this technique called meta-analysis. And that's what this team, Zhao, Z-H-A-O et al. Did. And they actually pulled together 107 population studies, which was really, really impressive. And what they found, and this was really quite striking, they put it into the context of the UK units that people would have, or they put it in terms that I could put it into that terminology. So they basically said that if you're an occasional drinker or a low volume drinker, you actually had lower risk than the non-drinker. And what did that mean? Because that's where you're in that moderate territory.
Right.
So there was a slight sex difference. So let's have a look at that, because you might have more female followers than male followers.
Yes,
I
I do.
know
I
I
think
do.
I do. Yes.
Yeah, so the risk for men kicked in at what in the UK would be 40 to 56 units per week. So that's 4 times higher than the maximum of the 14
So
units.
are you saying that up to 40 to 50 units a week is considered moderate?
Yeah, in this study,
Oh, in
there
this
was no
study.
evidence that you had a higher risk than a non-drinker if you were consuming between 40 to 56 units a week. And for
Oh,
women, it was 22 to 38 units a week. Now, if we just remind ourselves what a unit is, and again, I had to go into
yes,
this
what is a
because,
unit?
yeah, it got really complex. So I did a little, I mean, this is the kind of study that I dissect every week. So I did a little
Right.
table here, and I said, okay, here's your US standard drink, which is 8 grams, I think it is. US standard drink is 8 grams of pure alcohol, and the UK standard drink is only about 5. So 1.8 units is a 150 ml glass of wine. So it's a really
Right.
quite small glass of wine that's
Is a
a 1
unit.
unit
Yes,
in the
yes.
UK. But it
And I
means,
think we all have quite big wine
yeah,
glasses.
yeah,
At
it's not
home,
the
if we
one.
fill them up, it's probably 2 or 3 units, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's not the ones we serve at home. If you go into a pub and say, can I have a small glass of wine, they're supposed to give you a UK
Yes.
unit, and you kind of look at it, it's like, well, can you give me another glass of wine, please?
Yes.
So it is very small. It's probably around, not even 100 ml, 90 ml or something. But you're
Yeah.
allowed up to 38 of those a week
Yeah.
as a female, according to this most recent evidence, before you will even hit the risk level of a non-drinker.
Wow.
Now, the really big thing with alcohol is, and one of Tony's key points is it's really quite individual. So if you're the kind of person who gets addicted to things, alcohol might not be good for you. But then we know people who get addicted to sugar, and we know people who get addicted to cigarettes, and we know other people who can have one cigarette if they're on a film set and then not feel they need to go back to smoking, or they can have
So,
a
so,
bit of sugar.
so you think alcohol? I mean, look, obviously, if you're an alcoholic, you're addicted to alcohol. Um, but are you saying so you can actually drink quite a lot to be considered a moderate drinker?
Yeah. Well,
Well,
in
well,
this latest research, that's what it found.
22 for a woman, so
Yeah.
22 units a week.
22 to
So,
38
oh, 22 to
to
30.
38. You're in that range.
Okay,
So
let's
think of that
round it out
J
to about
again.
30. So that's about 15 glasses of our big glasses at
Yeah.
home.
So if you
So,
think of that J again, what that range is describing is that area under the line 1 there. So
right.
all your alcohol consumption under that line of 1 there is, you've got a lower risk than someone who doesn't drink at all.
That seems a lot to me. So that's the
It does.
so that is the equivalent of 2 generous glasses a day of wine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, great.
Oh,
I mean,
sorry,
I'm
actually, no. Now
absolutely delighted to hear this.
take it as about, yeah, if you took it as about 28, if you took it somewhere in the middle of that range, then you'd be looking at about, yeah, you'd be looking at 4 units a day, 28 units a week,
But
4
I think it's
units a
also,
day.
I mean, one has
Yeah.
to listen to one's body.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as a woman, as I'm getting older, I can feel, and this makes me sad that alcohol doesn't agree with me as much as it did.
Mm,
So I cannot drink as much. There is no way I could drink 2 big glasses every night.
yeah.
For me
Yeah.
personally, that would
Yeah.
be too much.
Yeah.
So moderation is the key. And I suppose, I mean, we're not sitting here encouraging people to go and have a drink. We're just trying to look at the statistics. And obviously, being a heavy drinker is not healthy for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just don't understand, why are they therefore saying that there is no level of alcohol consumption that is safe? Why would they say that?
I guess, why would they say wear a mask when they know that it's not healthy for us? Why would they say stay indoors and
No,
don't
but why on this
socialize?
specific one is there? are they not looking at the research properly, or is there some sort of agenda here?
That is a good question. I think we've had this debate before. Why do they come out and say red meat is bad for you when it's the oldest food that we've ever consumed? There's only ever two reasons for getting something wrong. There's incompetence or there's an agenda. There's a conflict. I don't think there can be incompetence because they have committees looking at this kind of thing. There are definitely conflicts, but what is puzzling is normally the conflicts make sense. So you see the fake food industry saying we want people having cereal for breakfast instead of eggs when eggs are healthier because it's good for their profits.
Yes.
There's a really anti-drink industry agenda being waged by a number of public health officials. And the only thing I can think of is that at some level they're Puritans and they actually don't want people doing anything that might be deemed sociable or enjoyable.
That's curious, isn't that how curious? In fact, Tony Edwards mentions this in his book, I think. He mentions that the way that, alcohol is getting such a bad rap now, and there, you have dry January, there's now a spring incentive, there's, at the end of the year, and people are always giving up alcohol for whatever. He said it's almost like a resurgence of the temperance movement
Yeah.
in the 19th century, where
Yeah.
people were encouraged to not drink. Drinking was considered a sin. People would sign papers. So have you had a chance to read Tony's book yet?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
not so much the new one. I've sort
Yeah.
of speed read the new one. I remember reading the first one very thoroughly at the time. I think it's right. I mean, to use words like the temperance movement or puritanical, you could say that because alcohol tends to be consumed socially, that actually it's trying to stop social interaction. And I know
Well,
people
that would
who've
be interesting. If alcohol turned out to be that poisonous for us, fair dues. But what I find interesting is that it's getting all this bad press, and we're being told all these things that, that I was actually becoming deeply concerned about. So, it's been quite alarming. So I couldn't believe it when I saw an article about this new book. And I was just really glad when you when you knew all about it. So do you think that there are health benefits to alcohol?
I do. I mean, that non-drinker group, having said that, that is quite a difficult group to use as the benchmark for various reasons. With that caveat, yes, and I think one of the aspects of it that is so valuable is the sociable aspect. So if you look at the person who is drinking, they might be sharing a glass of wine with their partner in the evening. We know that for a number of people, they find if you can drink sensibly,
Yeah,
we're not talking about when it becomes a problem, the violence that can be associated with alcohol. We're not
absolutely. I mean,
talking
there
about
are
all of
problems.
that.
There
Yeah.
are
But
problems with
if,
alcohol for
let's
sure.
say you come home from a tough day of work, and I've got a lot of female friends who'll say they'll come home from a tough day at work, and one of their greatest joyful moments of the day is when you kick the shoes off, you get in through the door, you slip into something more comfy, and you pour that first glass of
Yeah.
wine from the
And it
fridge,
is very
particularly when it's
relaxing. I
warm.
mean,
Yeah.
that's how I like to drink,
Yeah.
after a long day or whatever. It's just, and I think everybody's moderate sweet spot is different. And I think
Yeah.
it is important to listen to the body, because as I said, mine has changed. And so what I've noticed for me, one glass really is my limit. I used to be a 2-glass girl. Now I'm a 1-glass girl, and not every night.
Yeah.
Not
You
every
made an
night.
important point earlier, actually, that we shouldn't miss. So, what do you drink if you're not drinking alcohol? Now, I've done a conference in Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
which was an experience, not entirely a nice experience being a woman over there.
Right.
But we had on our dining table buckets of ice with just fizzy pop in. And they are
Of course, they don't drink
absolutely,
alcohol
they
there.
don't drink any alcohol. So it doesn't
Yeah.
matter how posh the dinner was. It could be the end of conference, banquet, everyone's dressed up in their finery. The drinks on the table, whether it's breakfast, whether it's lunch, whether it's the evening meal, are all the same. And it's a full fat, full leaded sugar Coke, 7-Up, Fanta, full sugar drink. So with a meal, and of course it's a hot country, the aircon is dry inside, they're getting through several cans They
Yeah.
must be drinking something like 1,500 calories. The calories only of interest because of the sugar and the carbohydrate that it contains. You know, they must be having something like 300 teaspoons of sugar of fizzy drinks on a daily basis. And they have a massive obesity problem over in these countries.
Well, I would much rather have a glass of wine than a glass of Coke.
Absolutely, it's
I
better
have
for
to
you.
say. And also, of course, in the Middle Ages, when water was contaminated, and I don't know if anybody ever actually drank water,
No,
they used to drink mead,
mead, yeah,
which was a form
cider.
of wine, honeyed wine, which they
Cider,
drank all day long.
yeah,
So through the Middle Ages, people just drank all the time, didn't
yeah,
they?
yeah,
I mean, that must have been interesting.
yeah.
I mean, everybody must have been
Children as well, because you couldn't,
slightly sozzled most of the
yeah,
time.
yeah, you
And every
couldn't give
time you're
children
thirsty,
contaminated water. Yeah, they've got to drink the
you just
actual,
drink some wine.
yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah.
Well, thank you. I mean, this is really good news, and it sounds like I'm definitely going to have a read of this book. I'm going to get hold of a copy, The Very Good News About Wine, because it sounds like a must read, and it just goes to show that it's always worth doing your own research. Just, don't take things at blind value, because the truth is out there, and it's not always what you think. So, but just to finish off, I just want to say what I said before. Sensible drinking, and I think everybody's sensible is different, and I think drinking will not suit some people.
Yeah.
Some people have a bad reaction to alcohol, and then they just naturally drink too much. But I think if you're a person who can just have a glass or two when you feel like it, then it sounds like it's quite a healthy thing to do.
Be French.
Be French. So it's not a myth about the French then?
No, it's not. But they also live in a fabulous country with sunshine and the Mediterranean, and it's nothing to do with the olive oil. It's everything to do with the
Well,
climate.
parts of it. Some of it are a bit, like England in the north.
Yeah.
But okay, great. Well, I think this is, anybody who's done dry January, I'm sorry about that.
Stop now.
Should
You're
have
risking your
put this out a
longevity.
little bit sooner, but
Yeah.
there we go. Okay, thank you, Zoe. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.